The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 139.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Welcome back to the EL. Today we have Rory Vaden, author of Procrastinate on Purpose. I say that gingerly because I actually mispronounced this about 2 or 3 times in the actual interview itself. But all jokes aside, this is one of my all-time favorite authors and books that we've covered on here. It is brand spanking new as of when we actually recorded it, and only a couple days. Roy does an amazing job. One, he has passion, but two, he takes us through this book that is absolutely phenomenal. And I think will really create what we talk about on here a lot, those paradigm shifts, those things that might hurt in the beginning, but just accelerate your business. And I can't wait for you to listen in. So without further ado, let's bring on Rory. Welcome, Rory, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Thanks, Wade. Good to be here.
Will you take just a moment before we take a deep dive into the book itself and introduce yourself? Tell us just a little bit about you personally.
Yeah, well, my name is Rory Vaden. I was born at a young age, like many of us, and I'm the co-founder of Southwestern Consulting and the New York Times bestselling author of Take the Stairs and the new book, Procrastinate on Purpose.
Before we dive into Procrastinate on Purpose, what the Southwest Consulting, what do you guys do there?
Yeah, so in 2006, I co-founded Southwestern Consulting with a couple partners, and now we've grown to about 95 full-time people. Oh. And we do what we really do is we help people achieve their goals in life, but specifically salespeople. So we do sales coaching. We are one of the largest providers of one-on-one sales coaching in the entire world. And so we've got coaches and consultants, and we've done work in like 35 different countries around the globe. So we do consulting, coaching, and then, keynote speaking and products.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now let's jump right into your book that you just discussed. Oh man, I have trouble with this word, so people are going to be laughing at me in the audience. Procrastinate on Purpose.
You got it.
Is the actual name. Which was actually just made available a couple days ago. So roughly January 6, 2015. And so, Roy, we're going to move quickly, but here are the top questions that our listener / future reader would like to get answered. And so what was the inspiration behind writing this book?
In Take the Stairs, we talked about 3 different types of procrastination. So that was my first book and really our first book as a company at Southwestern Consulting. And we talk about classic procrastination. Classic procrastination is about consciously delaying the things we know we should be doing. We all know about that. There is another type of procrastination that a phrase that we use called creative avoidance. Creative avoidance is a little bit different than classic procrastination because it's unconscious. It's unconsciously filling the day with menial work or trivial work, and we create stuff for ourselves to do so that we can do those things and avoid doing the things we know we really need to do, but we don't feel like doing. The Take the Stairs book was really about solving those 2 problems. It's the psychology of overcoming procrastination and improving self-discipline. But in the book, we mentioned just a couple paragraphs on this new type of procrastination that we started noticing not in the lazy people or the apathetic or the disengaged, but in the chronic overachievers, the movers and shakers, as we like to say. And we coined the phrase priority dilution. And almost every major media appearance that we got from Take the Stairs, Fox Friends and CNN and all these different things, they were fascinated about the new procrastination, which affects like entrepreneurs, the go-getters, the hungry people. And yet it's the same net result that we delay. At the end of the day, our most significant priorities are left unchecked, not because we're lazy, but because as our star rises, we unconsciously or consciously allow our attention to shift to less important, but perhaps more urgent tasks. And so that we decided was such a hot button, we need to dedicate a few years worth of research to solving the priority dilution problem.
So Roy, what would you say makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
Yeah, it's a really important question because we would call this book a strategy book, but it's already getting lumped into the time management bestseller list and productivity, and certainly it touches on that space. But the opening sentence of the book says everything that you know about time management is wrong. And as we have been working with our coaching clients, we've had over 3,400 people that we've worked with one-on-one. A lot of them are entrepreneurs, salespeople, sales leaders. What we've noticed is that most of the cliches that you hear about time management and most of the productivity frameworks that people use and talk about were developed in the 80s and 90s, or maybe right at the turn of the century. But it's been 15 years, and think of how the world has changed since even 2000, but particularly since the late 80s. So there's really two core things that make this book different from every productivity book. The first one is that everything that you read about time management, almost all of it, is all about logic. It's tips and tricks, tools and technology, calendars and checklists, it's apps and flow charts and all this kind of stuff. Well, what we noticed is that today, time management isn't just logical, it's emotional. And that's why the subtitle is The 5 Permissions to Multiply Your Time, because we really tackle the human element of productivity. And it's a fascinating journey and discussion about how feelings of like guilt and fear and anxiety and worry drive our decisions about how we spend time as much as anything. So that's the first way that this is completely different, I promise you, than anything you've ever read on productivity. The second way is that it introduces an entirely new era of thinking. We talk about the 3 generations of time management. Era 1 was about managing your time and doing things efficiently. Era 2 was about prioritizing your time, and that introduced the urgency calculation and the importance calculation. But Era 3, which we believe is what we are in now, which is what multipliers, the term we use for ultra performers in today's modern world, they have unconsciously developed a third calculation, which is not importance or urgency, but significance. And significance and emotion are the two really distinct characteristics of procrastinate on purpose.
So we were talking a little bit about David Allen earlier, and he actually recommended I insert this question in, and I love it. And it seems like most authors love it as well. And that's, how do you suggest the reader engage with your book? Is this one they should jump in and out and cherry pick information as needed? Or did you really design it to be read from front to back?
Well, this one is designed to be read from front to back. And, the book launched on Monday. So far, there are like 55 reviews or something on Amazon, and it ended up hitting number 1 in 5 different categories and number 13 overall. And the reviews are saying that people picked it up. They were just going to read like the first few sentences, and they literally sat and read the whole thing. Because the reason why you wouldn't read a book cover to cover is because you don't have time. Well, one of the things in the first chapter is we talk about how true multipliers, never complain about how busy they are. It's one of the key defining characteristics of the ultra performers, because they have a different level of perspective. And so we start exploding these myths that people have one by one. And so, people find themselves, it sounds like, here just in the first week, that they are reading it cover to cover. And I got hooked too, because I just downloaded the audiobook because I'm always interested to hear it. And, obviously I'm pretty familiar with the content, and I hate everything I write usually. But it's really a cover to cover book. And it's the first part is really about changing the way the book will radically change the way that you think about time. And that really happens in the first part. And then the second part is all about the focus funnel, which is a very practical framework that you can apply immediately and on a daily basis.
I'm glad you brought up those reviews, because as a book lover, I am always checking. Matter of fact, I will sort through Amazon by reviews and stars and all these different kinds of things. And I'm not sure if I've ever seen a book do this well this quick ever. So congratulations on the success that it's had. And I'm not talking about a book that's even been out for for a couple of days. So it's fantastic. But
Thank
Rory,
you.
now that we know the purpose, a little bit of the background behind the book, let's take a deep dive into the content. And I always like to preface this as, you're sitting with one of your best friends. Maybe he didn't even know you just wrote a book. You're in a coffee shop and he's asking, all right, hey, what is this all about? And you have the next, 5, 8, 10 minutes even to really walk us through. And in this case, it's the future reader. They're wondering, okay, I hear this, procrastinate on purpose. What is this book all about? So will you take the next couple minutes and share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for you specifically listening, assuming that you are one of the movers and shakers in the world of business that this book is written for, my guess is if you are like me, that the number one challenge you have is keeping up with it all, right? Like it's just having time. And that word priority dilution probably speaks to you because you get pulled in an infinite number of directions. As there's always fires to put out. There's always these pressures. It's trying to, be a good, family spouse or parent, but not sacrificing the results in your business. And the one thing that would actually really change your life and help you get to the next level is more time. And yet most of us think of time as finite, but this book shows you how to multiply time, how to literally create more time. And I know when you first hear that, it seems, kind of superfluous, like it's over the top, it's exaggerated. And I'll explain it in just a second. So let's talk quickly a quick history of time management theory, because my guess is the person listening here is probably read a ton of books. And so they'll appreciate this. So Era 1 time management thinking was about managing your time. It was about doing things efficiently. And productivity as a body of work really started to develop in the 50s and 60s. It was on the heels of manufacturing. And efficiency is a very linear mode of thinking. It's what we call one-dimensional thinking. And the idea with efficiency was if I could do things faster, then theoretically that would create more time in my life. It would create more margin, right? If I have 10 items on my to-do list, then if I could do them quicker, then theoretically there would be space left over that I could use for leisure or planning or, self-development or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with efficiency, but there is a limitation to efficiency. I mean, all things being equal, efficiency is better, but there is a point of diminishing returns to the efficiency strategy, which is very well evidenced by the fact that all of us are carrying computers in our pocket. We're moving faster than ever. We're working more hours than ever before. And yet the statistical sampling that we did said that 74% of people do not feel like they're reaching their potential in the workplace. Well, there's more to do than we can ever get to. It seems like sometimes we're falling further and further behind. I wrote this book for me. I mean, when we launched Take the Stairs, we had 12 people on our team. In the last 3 years, we had 95. We now have 95. And so my life has changed. And I had this problem. I mean, Take the Stairs was great. It was it created a whole host of new solutions, but it created a whole bunch of work as we really started growing. So efficiency caps out almost. Well, in the late 80s, Dr. Covey writes a book that changes the world, 1989, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he really introduces, in my opinion, single-handedly almost, the concept of prioritization. And in his book, he talks about, in chapter 3, he talks about the time management matrix. And there's a picture that he draws, and we had to get a licensing agreement with them just to even talk about it legally. But the picture, we didn't include the visual in the book because we're not allowed to. Yet it is one of the most copyright infringed upon diagrams of all time. And it's a diagram where the y-axis is importance and the x-axis is urgency. And what Dr. Covey did so brilliantly, and their whole team, was they moved us from one-dimensional thinking to two-dimensional thinking. And it was this idea that I could score my tasks based on their importance and urgency, and then I could prioritize the ones that mattered the most. And prioritizing is great. Prioritizing is a valuable skill. Prioritizing is all about focusing first on what matters most. Just like efficiency, prioritizing needs to be something that you still strive towards. So you're not going to completely abandon what you know about time management, but it has changed. Because here's the limitation of prioritizing, which nobody ever talks about. I mean, think about this. That book came out in 1989. There is no social media. There is no internet. There's barely computers and cell phones. There's still like 6 channels on television, and you got to stand up and twist the knob. I mean, think about how the world has changed, and so you cannot solve today's productivity issues with yesterday's productivity thinking. And so here is the limitation that took us forever to realize, because we accepted prioritizing as the ultimate time management strategy, because that's the way everybody talks about it. And, the book has sold 25 million copies. So it's kind of cited as the ultimate source on productivity. And so here's the limitation. There is nothing about prioritizing that creates more time. All prioritizing does is take item number 7 in your to-do list and bumps it up to number 1. That's a valuable skill from an attention and focus perspective, but it still doesn't do anything to help you accomplish the other 9 items on your to-do list, and it does nothing to create more time. All prioritizing is borrowing time from one area of your life or one set of tasks to focus on another. It's kind of like juggling, right? If efficiency is running on a treadmill, it's going faster and faster and faster. Well, prioritizing is like juggling. It's reshifting my priorities. Well, in our coaching clients, literally, we have some of the top people in the world in their professions that we're coaching on a daily basis for 6 months or longer. We have met some of the world's most efficiently working people and some of the world's best prioritizers. In other words, these people are insanely fast jugglers. But what happens is less a new mode of thinking. Your only choice is to do things faster or to add more balls to your schedule, more things to juggle. And what happens is when you do that is you are heading towards burnout, right? The only option is to either become a complete workaholic and likely eventually burn out or have these negative things happen in your life, or to let everything just fall apart. And it's almost like we're a bunch of insanely fast juggling hamsters heading towards this inevitable crash landing, which describes my life, or it did describe my life. So when we started to dissect what ultra performers do, these multipliers as we call them, we noticed something different. They were making a different calculation that we call the significance calculation, and they were multiplying time. So here is era 3. Here's how you multiply your time in one sentence. So if you've been tuning out, wake up and capture this sentence. You don't want to miss this. The way that you multiply time is by giving yourself permission to spend time on things today that create more time tomorrow. I'll say that again. You multiply your time by giving yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today to create more time tomorrow. The significance calculation is about thinking longer term. It becomes the z-axis. It turns that 2-dimensional diagram into a 3-dimensional cube. And if importance is how much does something matter, urgency is how soon does it matter, but significance is how long is it going to matter. And here's the problem with 2-dimensional thinking. We use things like to-do lists. This is another great example of how everything you know about time management is wrong. Now, it's not that to-do lists are bad or evil or that they're completely irrelevant. To-do lists can still be very valuable. It's not about the technique of a to-do list that is wrong or has changed according to multipliers. It is the thought process of how you create the to-do list. Most of us create our to-do list by asking the question, what's the most important thing I have to do today? And that's why we call it a to-do list. It gets on our to-do list. But multipliers think differently. They don't ask themselves the question, what's the most important thing I have to do today? They ask themselves the question, what are the things that I can do today that create more time tomorrow? That is the significance calculation. It is getting outside of the construct of thinking only about one day, because inside of one day, time is indeed finite. We all have 24 hours, 1,440 minutes, 86,400 seconds, and we cannot create more time. But when you make the significance calculation and you start thinking about the future, you start to realize there are things that you can do today that will create more time tomorrow. But the emotional element comes in because you have to give yourself permission to do those things. Because if otherwise, you're always falling victim to whatever is latest and loudest. You're always inappropriately overweighting urgency. Because here's a good example. Well, the focus funnel, and I know we're coming close on our time. The first part of the book kind of gets you to understanding multiplying your time. The second part of the book is really how to do it. And we introduce a diagram called the focus funnel. And the focus funnel has 5 strategies, each of which that multiply time. And we created a visual framework, which is our attempt to codify the unconscious thought process that the world's multipliers use. They just didn't know they were using it. We had to figure it out and deconstruct it. Well, and then each of the 5 strategies has a corresponding permission. Here is strategy number 1. Is eliminate. So if you picture the funnel, and the top is the wide end, and all of your tasks are entering into the focus funnel. The first choice, which is by far where we have the widest swath of opportunity to multiply our time, is to eliminate. Because by saying no to something today, it creates more time tomorrow, because it means tomorrow I'm not doing something that I would have otherwise been doing. But the emotional element comes in is that most of us struggle with saying no. Most of us have a fear of letting people down. We don't want to be too good for people, or we have this sort of superhero syndrome, as my friend Chris Ducker calls it, where we want to do everything. And so we end up saying yes to things that we really should say no to because we're afraid of saying no. Well, the insight that we learned from multipliers is that you are always saying no to something. You are either consciously saying no to the things that don't matter, or you end up unconsciously saying no to the things that do matter. Anytime that you're saying yes to one thing, you are simultaneously saying no to an infinite number of others. Now, when you have that insight, you have a foundation to give yourself the emotional permission to ignore. That's the first of the 5 permissions, is the permission to ignore. And from that standpoint, you can now start saying no to things. And perfection is achieved not only when nothing else can be added, but when nothing else can be taken away. And that is a huge art form of great entrepreneurs in the world's multipliers. The rest of the focus funnel, the second step, which is halfway down the funnel, is automate. That's the permission to invest. Then at the bottom is delegate. That is the permission of the imperfect. And if a task cannot be eliminated, automated, or delegated, and you ask them in that order, then the task shoots out the bottom of the funnel. At that point, you know that you have a task that must be done, and it must be done by you. So there is only one remaining question. But it's a question that most of us don't ask because we have a fear of coming across as lazy or something like that. And so the remaining question is simply, should I do this task now, or can it wait until later? If the task must be done now, then it's not eliminate, automate, or delegate. It's what we call concentrate. That is the permission to protect your focus, close your door, shut off your email, and do whatever that thing is that your next most significant thing is. And don't feel guilty about ignoring everything else. You're giving yourself permission to protect, because at that moment, you have run a task through the methodology. You can have absolute conviction that it is the thing that must be done. It must be done by you. It requires your unique skill set, and it has the greatest impact over the longest period of time, and no one else can do it. But if the answer to that question, can this wait until later, is yes, then I am encouraging you, I am inviting you, and I am challenging you to not just eliminate, automate, delegate, or concentrate, but to procrastinate on purpose. And that is where the title of the book comes from. So procrastinate on purpose is really just one of the 5 strategies for multiplying your time. And so what you do, Wade, is you're going to pop that activity back to the top of the funnel, and that activity is going to enter into a holding pattern where it is cycling through the funnel until at one point, one of the other four strategies will come into play, which is that it won't be able to wait until later, and so it moves down into concentrate. Or what happens very often is you decide, really, I should have eliminated it in the first place, because if it can always wait, then you have to ask the question eventually, does it even need to be done? So that is procrastinating on purpose. But here's the thing to realize about procrastination, because some people say, well, Rory, and Take the Stairs, you said procrastination was the most expensive invisible cost in business today. You said it's the killer, of everything related to success. And there's a big difference, because there's a difference in waiting to do something that you know you should be doing, but you don't feel like doing it, versus waiting because you're deciding that now is not the right time. Waiting to do something when you know it needs to be done, but you don't feel like doing it, that is the killer of all success. That is indulgence. That is the most expensive cost in business today. That is procrastination. But waiting to do something because you're deciding intentionally that now is not the right time, that isn't an indulgence. That's a virtue. That's called patience. So inaction that results from indulgence is procrastination. But inaction that results from intention is patience, or what patience is a part synonym for procrastinate on purpose. So the book isn't so much about what you need to do in your life. It's about how to think, and creating the next level of results in your business requires the next level of thinking. And that's what procrastinate on purpose and multiplying your time is all about.
Wow. Rory, you, I don't say this often, but you just blew my mind as far as a completely different way of thinking of something. I'm the person, I love the paradigm shifts, or as MJ DeMarco calls it, the lifestyle shift. And I'm always looking, again, when I preface that a lot of the individuals you're talking to today is that entrepreneur who loves to move forward personally and professionally. Well, that takes paradigm shifts. That takes looking at something through a different light a lot of different times. And so I already can't wait to go back and listen to what you just said again, and to dive into your book, because so much fantastic information. That's what makes this next question, I think, difficult and kind of mean for me to even ask, but I know the reader will get a ton out of it. And that's, if the reader could only take away one concept, principle, or action item out of the entire book, everything you just laid out for us, what would you want that to be?
Oh, it's so easy. It's so easy. The whole book can be boiled down into this. It's all built around this one sentence. You multiply your time by giving yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today that give you more time tomorrow. And my guess is, I want you to buy the book. Of course I do, right? I want the book to blow your mind. It blew my mind. It has changed my life. It has helped me and our clients go from linear growth to exponential growth. It's helped us create margin and peace in our life. It's helped us have a sense of perspective. Even when you have lots of emails, you have a different sense of calm about you, because you're not living in the world of urgent. You're living in the world of significant. It changes everything. It absolutely changes everything. So you give yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today that give you more time tomorrow. So I want you to buy the book. There's a ton in there. In fact, I'll give you a free 1-hour webinar that you can go so you can see the focus funnel. But, if you weren't going to buy the book, the thing you got to know is that one sentence. Give yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today to give you more time tomorrow. It will change your life as you stop living urgent and you start living significant.
So Rory, that's what a huge, valuable piece of information. And you might have already answered this next question, because my next question is, do you have a favorite quote from your book? And from what I've known, it might be what you've told us multiple different times. What you just answered in that last question. So do you have a favorite quote, or one that's resonated so far? I know it's a very short period of time, but with the audience?
Well, actually, that's not my favorite quote.
Oh, okay, good.
That is the most, I think, powerful, sort of life-changing thing. That's the premise of the book. That's the concept. That's the big idea. And we hope that it helps of course we want to sell lots of books, but we Take the Stairs is selling lots of books. It's in 11 languages and hit #1 on Wall Street Journal and #2 on New York Times. And so, this book is really about helping people like me get more peace. That's what we really want. So, but anyways, my favorite quote is in the Automate chapter. And I wish we had time to go through it because it's an incredible discussion and journey of how you get to this. But a huge, profound moment for me in my own life as I was writing, like I didn't have the thought until I'm sitting there typing this on the keyboard and it falls out of my fingers, is that automation is to your time exactly what compounding interest is to your money. Automation is to your time exactly the same that compounding interest is to your money.
I just came off reading Tony Robbins' new book, Money, Master the Game. And that whole book is talking about compounding the money. So I'm glad, because now what you just said has so much more value to me because I know way more about compounding in that money time frame. So that is absolutely huge. And Rory, we ask those quotes, and it's so difficult because so many people are mobile right now and don't have the opportunity to write that down. Maybe they're in their cars. So we're going to put that on our show notes at the elpodcast.com, along with the quotes and other takeaways from this interview so that people can go back and check that out. But this next one, which we'll also put on the show notes, is something that we have to ask because the book lovers want to know. And that's if there was only one book you could recommend to our listeners based on the way it's impacted your life, much like your book is going to impact so many others, what would you want that to be?
Oh gosh. Well, if you force me to choose one book, I in the sense of you asking the question, I couldn't really answer it. So if I had to choose one, the book would be the Bible. Regardless of your spiritual faith, the lessons and principles in the book, it's incredible. And it talks about the way that human beings were designed, and there's not a more powerful thing. If you think of traditional books, I read a book a week, just like a lot of you probably do. The books that have most impacted my life, some of them would be cliche. I think of Good to Great. I think of Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. I think of How to Win Friends of Influence People. Start With Why by Simon Sinek was a huge one. I also love his new book, Leaders Eat Last. But if I had to choose one outside of the Bible that I think would really touch every area of a person's life and set them up, and it couldn't be one of my own books, I would say Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover. I think that book touches every area of your life and can save your marriage and transform your thinking. And I'm just a huge Dave Ramsey fan, and he's been a big supporter. And but we give it to every one of our employees, and I think that is the book that changed my life the most.
Excellent, thank you. And there was multiple, so I'm glad that you actually gave me multiple.
For my 10 best favorite one book ever.
You know what? We say that, I think, just to limit it, but I honestly, as long as someone's adding value, and you did a great job of promoting those different ones, and I agree with you 100%. As far as almost every principle that you read in another book, you would have read in the Bible first anyway. It's ideas that have been spun off, kind of the original. So
totally. On that note. So this is crazy. So I write the whole book, right? Genesis 1, verse 28. It's chapter 1, verse 28. God delivers his first command to all of humanity. What is it? Be fruitful and multiply.
That's excellent. Well, Rory, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for listeners to not only get more information on you, but also your book, Procrastinate on Purpose?
Yeah. So here's the thing to do, just to keep it simple. Go watch the free webinar. Check it out. You share it with your team, share it with whoever you want. It's very rare. I don't know how long we're going to keep it up, but it's a 1-hour webinar. It's at procrastinateonpurpose.com. It's me talking you through the whole thing. I'm spilling the beans, and you could see it. And then that is where there is the most exciting offer to order the book. There's a special deal on how you can get Take the Stairs with it and stuff. But regardless, go to Procrastinate on Purpose, watch the webinar, and then you and I can get connected, on my blog and social media, my podcast, and everything from there. So I would just say procrastinateonpurpose.com.
Rory, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. Many times we refer to it as someone's baby because we know it takes so much time and effort and development. But thank you for coming on and sharing your baby, your book with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Wade. Thank you for what you're doing here, and thank you for having me.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you'd like more information on Rory or his book, Procrastinate on Purpose, just visit the show notes at the elpodcast.com. And if you want an opportunity, which I think a lot of you will after listening to that interview, if you want an opportunity to win that book, visit the same website, the elpodcast.com, and become a VIP.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.